Number 10. Holding the trainer under. Kenneth Peters, a SeaWorld trainer, was nearly killed when a 5,000-pound or just under 2,300-kilogram orca dragged him underwater in front of a horrified audience in 2006. The orca, named Kasatka, submerged Peters during a show after the whale was upset after hearing her calf crying out in the middle of the display in the marine park. From out of nowhere, the giant orca grabbed Ken by the leg and pulled him underwater, trapping him at the bottom of the tank. Ken and Kasatka had been in the middle of a show. The whale was supposed to lift Ken out of the water on the tip of her nose. The routine had been done flawlessly hundreds of times before, but when the pair burst through the surface, everyone quickly realized something wasn't right. Ken was seen flailing wildly, and the whale had a hold of his foot and wasn't letting go. The crowd gasped in shock, then watched helplessly as the killer whale dove deep into the pool, taking Ken down with her. Kasatka held him underwater for about 60 seconds, came back to the surface to take a breath, then yanked him under again. She eventually let him go, but he was just seconds away from drowning. The trainer held his breath the entire time and escaped with a broken foot and puncture wounds from her knife-like sharp teeth. This wasn't actually the first time Kasatka had attacked Ken. In 1993, she tried to bite him, and again in 1999. Then, after she gave birth to her calf, she became more aggressive and unpredictable. Sadly, Kasatka developed pneumonia in 2008 and was sick until 2017. She was euthanized at the age of 40. Number 9. Killer whales versus blue whales. For the first time in history, killer whales have been recorded coordinating savage attacks against the largest animal on our planet, the blue whale. Researchers started looking for orca attacks on blue whales in 2019, and it didn't take them long to find. They've witnessed 3 separate attacks off the coast of Australia, and each attack was carefully coordinated by a pod of orcas led by a female killer whale. In 2019, 2 blue whales were killed 16 days apart, then a third in 2021. These were healthy adult blue whales, massive creatures that can grow over 100 feet or just about 30 meters long. One of the attacks was carried out by at least 12 orcas, made up of 8 females, 1 adult male, with younger whales watching and learning from the parents. The orcas surrounded the blue whale, then they charged at it and began to bite off huge chunks of its blubber. After an hour of relentless attacking, the blue whale was weak enough to take it down. Its last moments involved orcas biting its head, and a female orca even swam into its giant mouth and ate its tongue as the whale passed out. After the blue whale was killed, 50 more orcas joined in for a community feeding. A bunch of birds showed up too, and for days there were other creatures feeding on the scraps of a carcass floating in the water. Number 8. Attacking a yacht. 63-year-old Alan Bruce was manning a 44-foot or just about 14-meter sailing yacht with 49-year-old Frenchman Stephen Peer on the Gibraltar Strait when 4 orcas began attacking and shaking their boat in an attempt to push them off. The two were able to capture a brief video of the animals, which included an 18-foot or just about 5.5-meter male, a female, and their 2 calves. After 90 minutes of harassment from the animals who continued to shove the hull of the boat, the veteran sailors withdrew below deck and radioed for help. The orcas destroyed the rudder, which crippled the boat, seemingly as payback for people overfishing in their natural habitat. Bruce described the details of the attack that started when he felt something hit the bottom of the boat. After checking, he saw a large male orca and several others following behind. He then ran to turn off the engine to let them play with the boat a bit, and then hopefully lose interest. He explains he did this since orcas can swim at speeds of up to 34 miles or just about 55 kilometers per hour and could smash the boat if they wanted to. That's why he didn't want to provoke them. The school of orcas was pushing the 10-ton boat sideways by then. Despite losing the main rudder, Bruce and his partner maneuvered it somehow to port 10 kilometers or just over 6 miles to the north. By this point, it was dark, so they had to dock the boat with no light. Thankfully, the whale pod finally left the yacht alone. Number 7. Shipwrecked. Despite no reports of orcas killing humans in the wild existing, there have been a small number of reported splashes. A family was shipwrecked in the Pacific Ocean by a pod of killer whales and had to survive in a dinghy for more than a month with hardly any food or drinking water. A pod of orcas struck the hull of Lucette, a 43-foot or just about 13-meter long wooden boat captained by the author and sailor Douglas Robertson. The Lucette was about 200 miles or just about 320 kilometers from the Galapagos Islands back in 1972. He, his wife Lynn, and their 3 children and a crew member were able to escape the sinking vessel. The 6 passengers fled in an inflatable life raft and a dinghy, but with little food and water to help them out. For weeks, they lived like castaways, gathering rainwater and catching turtles, mahi-mahi, and flying fish while sailing towards Central America on a sail they made by hand. They were ultimately rescued, but not until weeks later. Do you think you could survive floating in the ocean for a month? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Dawn Brancheav. Dawn Brancheav knew early on in her life that she wanted to work with orcas. She was 10 when she first saw Shamu at SeaWorld, possibly the most renowned killer whale in captivity. In a 2006 interview, she said the first time she saw Shamu, she told her mother that this is what she wanted to pursue in her life. It was her dream. Dawn quickly rose to fame as being one of the best trainers. Her image was splashed on billboards and commercials, and she was the key in modernizing Shamu's performance. Dawn regularly performed with orcas and would do many stunts alongside them for years. Although Dawn was fully aware of the risks associated with working with orcas, she also understood that orcas did not attack humans in the wild, and attacks on humans in captivity are extremely rare. On February 24, 2010, Dawn was performing a show with an orca named Tilikum at the Orlando SeaWorld. Her shows with orcas brought millions of tourist dollars into the park. But on that fateful day, everything changed. And ever since then, SeaWorld has not held another orca show with a human inside the tank. Dawn had developed a close bond with Tilikum. They had a great relationship, and Dawn really loved the whale, and to this day, it's unclear why Tilikum snapped. They were in the middle of the show when, out of nowhere, Tilikum grabbed Dawn by her ponytail, swung her around underwater like she was a toy, and shook her violently. Dawn's jaw, ear, and knee were fractured from the jerking motions. Her ribs were snapped, and her vertebrae were completely destroyed. Her spinal cord was severed, and her scalp was ripped clean off her head. Dawn was 40 years old at the time of her death. Today, she is missed by her family and colleagues at SeaWorld, and if there's a silver lining, it's that Dawn died doing what she loved. The incident sparked a revolution that would prohibit trainers from working in tanks with killer whales, and in 2016, SeaWorld announced it would no longer breed orcas in captivity. In a few years, there may not be a single orca left in captivity in the United States. Number 5. Hunting for sea turtles. In 2017, Nicholas Davalos, a photographer and biology student, was conducting fieldwork off the coast of Isla Isabela, the biggest island in the Galapagos. Nicholas was snorkeling at the surface when he saw 3 orcas go after a couple of green sea turtles. There was 1 adult and 2 juveniles. The oldest of the orcas used the front of its head to violently spin the turtle around underwater. It was literally playing with its food. Then one of the younger orcas grabbed a second green turtle by the fin and dragged it down deep below the surface. The killer whales did this for about 30 minutes before getting tired and swimming away. One of the turtles died from their bullying, and to make it even worse, the orcas didn't even eat the turtle that they killed. According to Robert Pittman with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, orcas often play with potential prey, then simply move on without even bothering to eat it. Robert compared them to cats, saying orcas can't help but push around sea turtles like a cat. Robert compared them to cats, saying that orcas can't help but push around sea turtles like cats push around a helpless mouse. Number 4. Orca and the Boy. A 12-year-old boy was enjoying himself in the shallow water near Ketchian, Alaska in the August of 2005. His name was Ellis Miller, and in only 4 feet or just over 1 meter of water, he found himself being attacked by a killer whale. From out of nowhere, a huge orca, 25 feet or just about 7.5 meters long, sped directly toward him. Before you freak out, the whale didn't eat the small child, but he did bump him and whacked Ellis with its huge head hard enough to send the boy flailing through the water. Biologists say either the whale was curious or it changed its mind about having the child for a snack at the last second. Gary Freitag, a volunteer with the National Marine Fishery Service, said that if the whale really wanted to take him, it very easily could have. Instead, the whale approached the child, probably thinking he was a seal, one of the killer whale's favorite meals. Then, when it realized it was about to eat a human, it called off the attack. This is interesting because it shows that even in the wild, and even if whales sometimes go out of their way to destroy boats, they still don't enjoy eating humans. There's never been a documented killer whale attack on a human in the wild. The only fatal interactions with killer whales happen in water parks. Number 3. KELTIE BYRNE. There have been 4 reported deadly orca attacks while in captivity, with one male orca named Tilikum, as we mentioned earlier, being the culprit in 3 of them. The first happened on February 20th, 1991 in Victoria, British Columbia at Sealand of the Pacific. Tilikum raced to KELTIE BYRNE, a trainer, grabbed her by the foot and dragged her underwater. He attacked alongside 2 smaller female orcas in the tank. Visitors were terrified as 3 whales repeatedly shoved and flung the trainer around the pool. Once, BYRNE even reached the pool's edge and tried to climb out, but the orcas dragged her back into the water. Other trainers tried to help BYRNE by throwing a life ring at her, but the orcas bumped it away. BYRNE surfaced 3 times before being pulled under again, and she eventually drowned from the struggle, and her body was rescued from the tank just a few hours later. Sealand of the Pacific shut down shortly after the incident, and the attraction sold all of its whales to the SeaWorld company. Number 2. Boat Adrift. In November 2021, a couple from the United Kingdom was stranded miles off the coast of Portugal after a killer whale attacked their boat. They were rescued early the next morning after an orca became interested in their sailboat. In July of 2020, reports of killer whales approaching boats in the waters off Spain and Portugal began to spread, and authorities identified 3 juvenile orcas as suspects at the time. The whales had rammed the rudders of some boats, even breaking them in some cases. It was unclear why the killer whales began to behave this way, but researchers believed it was unlikely due to aggression and more likely due to them being mischievous. But some of the incidents lasted for hours, and passengers described them as terrifying. Number 1. Alexis Martinez. Quito the orca is confined to a swimming pool where he spends his days entertaining tourists. In 1995, his mother Kalina gave birth to him, the first orca to be born in a SeaWorld amusement park, and has fathered multiple babies while in captivity since. The massive killer whale is one of the main attractions at Tenerife, Spain's Loro Parque, and has also traveled the world to perform and entertain. He formerly worked at theme parks in San Diego, Ohio, and Texas before getting relocated to his current Spanish residence. Something snapped in Quito just 3 years after his final move, though. On Christmas Eve 2009, he launched a terrible and lethal attack on one of his trainers, Alexis Martinez. Martinez worked as a trainer for years and was used to working with orcas. The 29-year-old was used to Quito, but on this fateful day, the massive orca reacted in a way his trainers had never seen before, and Alexis paid the ultimate price. Everything seemed normal on the day until the trainer and the whale started acting oddly while working in the training pool. He fumbled several of his techniques but appeared relaxed as he floated on the surface of the pool with his trainer Alexis. But in the days that followed, one of their other employees said Quito seemed to have placed himself between his trainer and his stage on purpose. Quito began leaning into his trainer when the underwater stage call sounded and Alexis started to swim. Another trainer tried controls that always worked with orcas, but Quito refused to obey and drove Alexis to the pool's bottom. Desperate, the trainer, who was still on the pool's edge, saw how severe the situation had become and attempted more signals to bring Quito back under control. It seemed to work as the orca rose to the surface of the pool and took a breath before diving back down to Alexis. The next scene for those watching was seeing Quito resurface with Alexis on the tip of his nose and his jaws shut. Quito eventually let go of her, but the 29-year-old trainer slid to the bottom of the pool. Other trainers, now frantic, urgently tried to pull Quito into another pool, but he resisted by messing with the barrier. Only after they threw a net into the pool did Quito swim inside, and Alexis's body was retrieved from the bottom of the water. She'd sustained severe injuries, including massive internal bleeding, and there was nothing that could be done to save her. Alexis died from grave injuries caused by the attack, including multiple compression fractures, tears to important organs, and the animal's bite marks on her body. The tragedy came exactly 2 months after the tragic case of SeaWorld trainer Dawn Brancheav. Thanks for watching. Would you rather swim with killer whales or sharks? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.